Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Joe Rogan. Always good to have you guys here today. I want to talk about somebody who, man, honestly, I think about him every now and then. It just blows me away how impactful he was, not just in wrestling, but in life and storytelling and inspiring people around the world. I'm talking about Eddie Guerrero. Now, if you're a wrestling fan, you already know exactly who Eddie was. If you're not a wrestling fan, stick with me because his story goes way beyond the ring. Eddie Guerrero wasn't just some guy in tights jumping around in WWE. He was this incredible performer and athlete, a guy who carried his demons but turned them into fuel, and someone who left a mark so deep that almost 2 decades later, people are still talking about him. The thing about Eddie is his story hits on so many human levels: family, struggle, redemption, legacy. The dude was fight in an industry dominated by giants, but he made people believe, man, that's power. So let's start at the beginning. Eddie Guerrero was born into this legendary Mexican wrestling family. His dad, Gory Guerrero, was already a big name in lucha libre, Mexico's wrestling scene. His brothers were wrestlers. It was like if your dad's Bruce Lee, your uncle's Jackie Chan, and all your cousins are stuntmen. You just grow up in that world. Wrestling wasn't just a job for Eddie, it was in his DNA. From the time he was a kid, he's surrounded by the art of storytelling in the ring. The Guerrero family were innovators, man. They were about high-flying moves, technical mastery, but also charisma, making people feel. And Eddie picked all that up. Now imagine being the youngest in a family of warriors like that. You gotta prove yourself, right? You don't want to just be, oh yeah, he's Gory's kid. No, you want to stand out, and Eddie did. From Mexico to Japan to ECW, WCW, and eventually WWE, he carved his path. I remember watching this guy in WCW. Back then, wrestling was in this war mode. WCW versus... You had all these larger-than-life characters, Hulk Hogan, the NWO, Goldberg, and here's Eddie Guerrero, this shorter, stocky guy with unbelievable skills. He could chain wrestle, he could fly off the top rope, he could brawl. And his matches? Dude... They were masterpieces. He wasn't just good, he was elite. He'd put on these matches with Rey Mysterio, Chris Jericho, Dean Malenko, stuff that hardcore wrestling fans still point to as some of the best technical wrestling ever seen on American TV. But here's the thing, Eddie had demons, battled addiction, painkillers, alcohol. The wrestling life back then was brutal. Constant travel, physical pain, pressure from companies that wanted you to look a certain way, be larger than life. And Eddie fell into that trap. He had this period where it looked like maybe he was going to lose it all. He got released. He went through hell. And most people, man, they don't come back from that. But Eddie, he did. That's part of what makes his story so powerful. Fast forward to when Eddie comes to WWE. At first, he was part of the Radicals, this group of WCW guys, Perry Saturn, Dean Malenko, Chris Benoit, and Eddie. And right away, he showed his charisma. Like, the guy didn't just wrestle, he entertained. Then you get the famous Latino heat persona. He's lying, cheating, stealing. That was the gimmick. He'd cheat to win matches, but people loved it. He had this smile, this little swagger, like he'd hit a guy with a chair, then lay down pretending he was the one who got hit, and the crowd would just explode laughing and cheering. It wasn't just funny, it was brilliant. It was psychology. Eddie understood the connection with the audience. He didn't just wrestle, you believed him. You rooted for him even when he was the bad guy. That's rare. And then you look at the in-ring stuff, frog splash, suplexes, chain wrestling, he could do it all, honestly. Pound for pound, Eddie was one of the greatest wrestlers who ever lived. Period. Let's talk about the peak. WrestleMania Madison Square Garden. Eddie Guerrero defends the WWE Championship against Kurt Angle. He's the champ. And this match is insane. Kurt Angle is a machine, Olympic gold medalist, freak athlete, and Eddie's out there, smaller but just scrappy as hell. There's this moment in the match, Kurt tries to grab Eddie's ankle for the ankle lock. Eddie unties his boot, so when Kurt grabs, the boot comes off. Eddie slips out, and then he rolls Kurt up for the win. Dude, that's storytelling. It's not just moves, it's character, it's intelligence, it's drama, and he retains the title. After the match, Eddie's in the ring celebrating. And then Chris Benoit, his best friend at the time, wins the World Heavyweight Championship in the main event. They embrace, tears in their eyes, both holding the top belts in the biggest wrestling company in the world. That was magic. That was the pinnacle of his journey. From addiction, from setbacks, from people doubting him, to being the guy. That's the dream, and he lived it. What's crazy about Eddie Guerrero is how much he connected with fans. You didn't have to be Mexican American, you didn't even have to be a wrestling fan. He was authentic. People felt his humanity. They knew his story, they saw his flaws, they saw his fight, and when he smiled, man, the whole arena lit up. He had this aura that made you believe, yeah, I can fight through my problems too, I can rise up. That's why to this day, people say Viva la Raza or wear those lie, cheat, steal shirts with pride. It wasn't just a gimmick, it was Eddie's spirit. But then the tragedy. November 13, 2005, Eddie Guerrero was found dead in his hotel room. He was only 38 years, think about that. 38, that's so young. He died of heart failure, linked to years of substance abuse earlier in his life. The wear and tear, the lifestyle. When that news broke, man, it hit like a bomb. Fans cried, wrestlers cried on live TV. The tributes poured in. You don't see that kind of outpouring unless someone truly meant something. And the thing is, even though he passed, his legacy never died. Eddie Guerrero is one of those names that still comes up in every discussion about the greatest of all time. Guys like Rey Mysterio, Sasha Banks, CM Punk, they all point to Eddie as their inspiration. Even today, wrestlers do the frog splash in tribute to him. That's legacy. You know, when I think about Eddie, it reminds me of the power of human beings to overcome. Like, we all have demons. We all struggle. Most of us don't do it on live TV in front of millions. Eddie did, and he turned that struggle into something beautiful. The way he made people laugh, cry, stand up out of their seats. That's art. Wrestling is performance, but when it's at its best, it's storytelling on the highest level. And Eddie Guerrero was a master storyteller. Rey Mysterio especially, man, that bond was deep. They weren't just tag team partners or rivals. They were like brothers. Rey still wears armbands and gear to honor Eddie. He's done it for nearly 2 decades. And think about the psychology there. Rey is one of the most beloved wrestlers of all time, and even he chooses to carry Eddie's memory every time he steps into the ring. That says everything. Eddie represented resilience. He showed that you could come from struggles, real deep struggles, and still rise to the very top. That story resonates with anybody chasing a dream. We also can't talk about Eddie without mentioning his family. His wife, Vicky Guerrero, became a huge figure in WWE after his passing. Think about that. She wasn't a wrestler, she wasn't a performer originally, but she carried Eddie's memory forward and became one of the most iconic managers in wrestling history. Excuse me. Every fan remembers that. Their daughters also had to grow up with the shadow of Eddie's fame and the pain of his loss. And yet, they've carried themselves with dignity, knowing that their father inspired millions. That's heavy, man. When you're the family of someone so beloved, you share them with the world. And the Guerrero family as a whole, Chavo Guerrero, his nephew, he carried the weight of losing Eddie while still performing. He honored him in matches, in tributes, and to this day, keeps his memory alive. You know, a lot of wrestlers are great athletes. Some are larger-than-life characters. Eddie was both, but he had something extra. He was real. Even when he was playing the bad guy, you could see the twinkle in his eye, like he was letting you in on the joke. He wasn't just a character, he was Eddie. And when he was vulnerable, when he cut promos talking about his struggles, you could feel it. This wasn't acting. This was a man opening his heart to the world, and the fans respected that honesty. They loved him for it. He took his struggles, his past, and he wove it into the story. Let's also talk about what Eddie meant culturally. For Mexican-American fans, and for Latinos in general, Eddie was huge. Representation matters. For so long, wrestling was dominated by these giant American or European stars. And here comes Eddie, waving the Mexican flag, speaking Spanish on TV, embracing his culture, and he wasn't a stereotype. He was authentic. Fans saw themselves in him, and that's powerful. It's the same way Bruce Lee inspired Asian actors and martial artists. Eddie Guerrero stood as proof that you didn't have to fit the mold. You could be yourself, you could be proud of your roots, and still be a star. That's why Viva la Raza became more than a catchphrase. It became a rallying cry. Fans in Mexico, the US, everywhere, they felt proud when Eddie said that. He gave them representation on the biggest stage in wrestling. Even today, people go back and watch his matches. Rey Mysterio at Halloween Havoc 97. That's considered one of the greatest matches of all time. Pure art. Eddie versus Brock Lesnar in 2004, where Eddie wins the WWE Championship. That's legendary. Think about that moment. Brock's this beast, the ultimate physical specimen, and Eddie beats him. That was a metaphor. That was David versus Goliath, and the world loved it. When Eddie hit that frog splash to win the title, people didn't just cheer, they erupted. Because it wasn't just a scripted outcome, it was Eddie's life coming full circle. From the bottom, from rehab, from losing everything. to standing tall as champion. That's why wrestling works. When real life and storytelling collide, you get magic. Now, one of the bittersweet things is that Eddie was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame after Vicky and his family accepted the honor. And the whole wrestling world just cried. Tears everywhere, because everybody knew he deserved it while he was alive. But at the same time, it was fitting. Eddie was immortalized, officially, as one of the greatest ever. And his Hall of Fame video package, man, that's still one of the most emotional things WWE has ever produced. And here's the truth. Eddie Guerrero doesn't need a Hall of Fame to be remembered. He's remembered every time a wrestler climbs the ropes and does a frog splash. He's remembered every time fans chant his name. He's remembered in the hearts of everyone who grew up watching him. Here's what I think is really important. Eddie Guerrero's story teaches us about redemption. He messed up. He battled addiction. He lost jobs. He lost opportunity. But he fought back. He didn't let those mistakes define him forever. He changed, he got clean, he got focused, and he reached the top. And that's the lesson for all of us. You don't have to be perfect. You can fall, you can fail. But if you get back up, if you fight, if you keep going, you can still achieve greatness. Eddie's life is proof of that. And yeah, his life ended too soon. But in those 38 years, he lived with more intensity, more passion, than most people live in. He left behind a legacy that will outlive all of us. So when I sit here and I think about Eddie Guerrero, I think about a guy who defied the odds, who made millions of people smile, who inspired kids, adults, wrestlers, fans, everybody. He wasn't the biggest, he wasn't the flashiest talker, but he had heart. And heart, man, heart beats everything. And that's why we still say it today, Viva la Raza. Long live Eddie Guerrero. Alright folks, that's it for today's episode. So if you're going through something, if you're fighting your own battles, remember Eddie. Remember how he fought his way back, how he connected with people, how he left a legacy that still shines bright. Take care of yourselves out there. Hug your loved ones, chase your dreams, and don't be afraid to rise after you fall. I'll catch you next time. Stay safe, stay strong, and as Eddie would say, Viva la Raza. Goodbye everybody.